cool. We're back on Facebook. Everything's live. Again, sorry I'm running a little late getting started today. Hope everybody had a good Christmas. I'm Steve Richards with the CEO Nation, and excited to get this last weekly webinar done for 2020. I'm not a big I hate 2020 guy. I know a lot of people are, but it's been a pretty good year, and I also think that any troubles that came out of this also probably helped a lot of people, identify weak spots in their game and use threats to turn them into opportunities to get better. So hope that was you guys or whoever's listening. If you're on live, you can use the chat or the Q&A to connect. I definitely want to answer questions as I go. I didn't send an email out today, and I didn't really connect with you guys ahead of time or post in the group, so you guys may not know what this one's about. But what I'm going to talk about today is dealing with problems and change. And I've got a bigger thing we're working on for. It's probably going to be a webinar training that we'll do or put it on YouTube. But I want to cover some of the high points today. I'm going to try to keep it to like 30 to 45 minutes and make sure I have time for Q&A. But I think there'll be some good stuff for you guys here. So if you're new to the CEO Nation, welcome. If you're in the Facebook group watching this, you can log on live so that you can engage and ask questions. If you're logged on live, you've already figured that part out. But just so you know, this is also being piped into the CEO Nation Facebook group, where if you're not a part of that group yet, go join it, because every week this is put in there live. And then that way you can go back and watch all the replays. If you want to go back and take notes, or if you miss one and you want to go back and watch it, you can scroll through the news feed and get access to it. So also, we've got a podcast called The CEO Nation. We just launched an episode with a guy named Chris Noggle today, which is cool, about his money mentoring business that he runs. He's done some other webinars through our real estate company. So some of you guys already know him. I think that went live. And then next week, part one of a two-part is launching, where there's a guy here in Indiana, where I'm from, Indianapolis, and he's had a top 10 ever software sale of a software company exit, a top 10 exit from the state of Indiana. So it was a big number, which he doesn't disclose, by the way. We talked to him because he started it from nothing. It was an idea. He worked for another big company here in town in customer service, kind of worked his way up left, was doing consulting, making decent money, but he realized he didn't own anything, which I think a lot of you guys that watch this may realize at some point. You own a job instead of owning something, right? Something you can build as a business, or something you can ultimately, like this guy, Greg, sold this company for a large sum of money. And that's really opened up things for him to do other stuff now. But through the process, he learned how to grow teams and hire and marketing and create a culture. And it was a really cool story. So anyway, that session was so long, we broke it up into a two-part. So that will be next week. We'll launch part one of Greg's podcast. And then the following week will be part two. And part two, we dig into some personal questions with him he had really interesting answers from a guy you would think that just made a lot of money. But that's all in the CEO Nation podcast. So you guys can check that out too, if you haven't checked it out. So I think that's all the housekeeping. Oh yeah, other than if you haven't been to the CEONation.com, you can actually access the podcast episodes there. And then that'll take you to, you can listen to them there if you want, but you can also get to the Stitcher and iTunes and whatever other streaming that you do your podcast on from there. Also, there's a cool KPI guide if you guys are trying to structure your business to the point where you can figure out what numbers to use. On the CEONation.com website, it's totally free. It's like a 25-minute training I did, which, although it's short, it's really in depth, and it has a book guide that comes, a worksheet that helps you kind of organize how to understand the metrics, numbers, KPIs, whatever you want to call them in your business. And there's also some homework that will actually give you an action item list on how to start collecting the numbers and what to do. Even if you're brand new to the idea of tracking numbers in your business, whether that's to understand your business better, whether it's to hold the people that work for you accountable, to grow it, to know if your marketing dollars are actually returning anything. There's a lot of reasons that we need to track, the data in our companies. Okay, with all that, I think that's all the housekeeping. So again, use the chat if you're logged in live. If you guys are on Facebook watching this or you're watching a replay later, if you got questions, I check the group out as often as I can. You can just post right on the live, the post that's in the group, just post right at the bottom, put a comment. I'll do my best to answer those questions. And then again, if you've got any questions at all about business, we're going to make sure there's a time for open coaching Q&A. So it doesn't need to be on today's topic. We'll get to that at the end. So I'll keep today short because I know, a little shorter than normal because I know it's a holiday week and we all got stuff to do. In fact, on Thursday, my daughter, my oldest child, turns 18. So unfortunately with COVID, that's going to be a little different. But tomorrow is my birthday and I'll be 29 again. And then again, my daughter's turning 18 on Thursday. And then we have, obviously that's New Year's Eve and New Year's. And so it's kind of a busy week with all that kind of stuff. And we're getting excited in our business, at least, about kicking off 2021. So I don't want to keep you guys here too long today, but there's some things I want to share. I want to start with this. So I think this is one concept out of the gate. If you write this down, and if this is the only thing you take away from today, it'll be worth showing up and listening or watching this video. But big problems seldom require a big solution. And I think one thing that we lull into in our businesses is that we think a solution has to be like symmetrical with the problem or has to be proportionate to the problem. And so we're all upset about something and we think we have to go in and fire someone, or we have to fire a vendor, or we have to change software, or some big thing has to happen. And the reality is that's because of the way that we're perceiving or processing the problem. It's because we're looking at it from the negative side of like, say there's this problem here and the ramifications go out to like over here and we're like, oh my gosh, this is all happening right now. Like the result. And we're focused on this bad result. And we think we have to put this big proportionate solution in place to fix the result. But if we can slide back to the source, what we can start to understand is like, okay, within this area of our business, whether it's sales or marketing or execution, which I would call fulfillment, what area of my business am I talking about? Well, there's probably, if you guys are functioning at any level, the whole thing isn't shot. Whatever. Let's for this example, let's call it sales. And so my sales are down. And so I may be coming in saying, I got to hire new salespeople, or I've got to retrain everybody. I've got to buy this expensive training, or I've got to come up with a whole new product line, or I'm coming up with all these big solutions. The reality is in a given situation where we want to start with is understanding the outcome that we want to affect, but we want to look at the whole area of the business that we're talking about in general. And we want to start with what I would call bright spots. The bright spots are the things that are working. So it's kind of like the process of elimination almost, where we're going to say, hey, what is working? But instead of identifying all the things that work, which would eliminate those from needing to be, potential problems that we have to focus on, right? So we're eliminating those. So there's less things, moving parts here to focus in on which ones might be broke. But that's not even my point. We don't want to just do that to eliminate. That is nice to know, like, well, actually our scripts are pretty good. Maybe we find out our leads are bad, right? Like through this process. But focusing on the bright spots gives us a second thing that's really important. This is something else you want to write down and understand here as a core concept to today's training. And the reality is, like, we would much rather build on our strengths and lean into our strengths as a person, right? If we're trying to better ourselves versus go knock our head against the wall to make our weaknesses better, right? And so some people, maybe you're watching this and you don't agree with me, but I think some people might lean to think, I want to really work on my weaknesses and I want to, kind of build up there. But the reality is most people, when they start to become successful, realize, nope, I need automation, I need software, I need a partner, I need to hire people, like I need a team. You delegate that stuff out that you don't like and you're not good at, right? Like those are your weaknesses in your game because you're not good or you don't like doing them. So you're not going to do them as efficiently or as responsibly as you should, right? So same thing in a problem. If I can look back and say, hey, listen, I got this issue. And whether it's a big problem I got to solve or there's a big change I want to create in this department of my business, I want to start looking at these bright spots. And then I want to say, what is working? And I want to build on those. And so, what I would like to do is use that as the catalyst, because small tweaks or saying, hey, this one thing is working, let's do some more of that. Or how can we apply this piece that's working here to this other piece down here? So, it's like the idea of focusing on the strengths, right? The bright spots, what is working, to start to create a new result instead of going down here and saying, hey, I've got this big issue that I want to change or fix, and I got to have this big solution. I got to work all this stuff. If I go to the source and I start to work on doing more of what's working, leaning into my strengths, not only will I slowly eliminate some of the weaknesses or identify them so they're more easily identifiable, but also I'll start to create more of a positive impact by focusing on what I know is working. I may be able to say, hey, in this department, I'm having an issue. Well, if I go look at this department and this department's running really well, what are they doing that's working really well? They're communicating better. I can take that concept and apply it back here, right? So it's all this idea of leaning into our strengths when we're having big problems or there's big change that we want to occur. The other thing is that it's really important because when you go in and you're looking at the results as the area that you're focused on, where the problem is or the change you need to occur, the other piece that's interesting is we tend to focus on what I would call like the result or the symptom, which is like what happens after the fact. And we spend our time trying to fix something that's already been put in motion. Whereas if we go back again over right into another area and we say, hey, I'm going to go back to this source over here. Not only does a small change here extrapolate out to a bigger result, but at this source level, we might fix one thing that makes all the other things go away. So in our real estate business, here's an example. One of the core businesses we own is a business that wholesales property to other investors. We go find good deals, and what we do is resell those to people that are landlords who want rentals or flippers who want to fix and flip a property for a profit. Those are investors, two different kinds of investors, right? Well, we used to just buy every house, take it down and own it ourselves. And then we would clean it out, clean it up a little bit. You know, we would create a listing on the MLS, the local listing service, and we would take pictures. And we had to, since we owned it, we had to get insurance in our name in case there was a fire. We had to mow the yard in the summertime. We had to turn the utilities on. There was all this stuff that went along with it, right? And so one issue is that we wanted to control the process more, which is why we decided to purchase these properties. A lot of people get a contract to purchase the home. And then while they own the contract, they sell the rights of that contract to the person, having never take ownership in the middle, right? We had a mental block that was like bottom feeder. Those people weren't as high level, I guess I would say, as us. I don't really know the best way to explain it, but we just felt like we're bigger than that because we've done hundreds and hundreds of transactions and we have the capability to buy it and all the knowledge and experience and licensing and money. So we're kind of a big deal because we can buy dozens of houses at a time. Well, that was a mental block that we had. Secondly, we also realized if we controlled that if we put it on the MLS, once we owned it, it was a little easier to sell and we didn't have to sell and we didn't have to focus on building a good sales organization to go find landlords and flippers to sell to. So the constraint of the issue we were dealing with was a couple-fold in that business a couple years ago, where our capital would get spread thin, for one. So we would have to slow down because we had to wait to sell so we could buy more because we had to actually use capital to buy it. Secondly, we were running amok with getting fined for not mowing yards or getting fined for windows being broken out of houses, or just starting to run into issues of like trying to deal with the management of owning all the properties, right? Thirdly, there was a third problem. Once we owned it, we had more options. So it'd be like, hey, now that we own it, maybe we should fix it up ourselves. Maybe if we fix it up because we know how, we could put a tenant and we could sell it to a landlord. He'll pay us more money because he doesn't have to fix it up or find a tenant. And so now we have all these options, right? It's almost like analysis paralysis, right? And so here's the symptoms, the resulting problems. we had too many options and we were not being very effective and productive. We had capital getting spread thin, and the cost of capital was associated with dealing with all that. Plus, we would have capacity issues. And then thirdly, we had to deal with all this management and preservation of the properties, because once we owned them, we had to get insurance, mow the yards or whatever. So we had spent, and this was in 2018 when we made a big shift, we were spending an enormous amount of effort into building an internal property management company, because none of the outside property management companies really wanted to work with us because we're a bad client. As soon as they got the house kind of all gathered together, we would sell it. Property management companies make a percentage of rents that are collected, and with us, they were hardly ever going to collect rents. So they didn't want to work with us. So we had a hard time finding people. So we were like, we better build our own. We were in the middle of building our own internal property management company, just to service all that crap. We also were looking to raise more capital, and we were spending a lot of time screwing around with trying to bring more money in, which creates more headaches and more risk, right? And then thirdly, we were also trying to create all these solutions where we could more easily make decisions about what we do and don't want to do to houses, right? Reality is, we just went back, way back in the equation, and the source problem was we needed to fix the back end sales so that we had a way better sales organization who had a lot of goodwill and strong rapport and trust with a lot of landlords and flippers. And then we could way more quickly and easily sell properties to them, even to the tune of not having to fix them up, not having to put tenants in them. We didn't have to own them in the middle. And then once we realized we could just start selling the properties faster without owning them first, or 80% of them instead of buying all of them, we only buy 20% or less now. All of a sudden, literally countless dozens and dozens of hours and thousands of dollars and salaries that people that we were going to hire, all that internal management, all the guidelines of decision making, right, and all the constraints of raising more money and the risk, it all literally was like poof. It was just gone, because we focused on fixing a source problem, and all the other resulting problems, we didn't have to, it didn't get easier. They just literally disappeared overnight. So that's one of the values of figuring out what is causing something and what the real root of the problem is, or what's allowing something to happen. So anytime you're going back, this is another thing you want to write down if you're taking notes. It's an important piece of this. When you got to ask yourself why 5, 6, 7 times. Why is this happening? Why does this matter? Why do I need to do something else? Why do I care about this? You keep asking these whys. Well, why? What's letting that happen? Well, what's letting that happen? And so at some level, you're going to peel back until you get to more of a root problem. But when you get to the root problem, the key thing, and this is what I want you to write down if you're taking notes, is you've got to figure out what either caused that to happen, and or could be both, allowed it to happen. So first, I've got to fight back to, and let me break this down to stay in order. The first core concept that I told you guys was big problems don't need big solutions, right? Number 2 is, instead of focusing on the bad negative problem part of the problem or the change you're trying to create, focus on the bright spots, like what is working, focus on the strengths and try to build from there. Thirdly, you're going to want to get back to the source of a problem. And so once you dig back through like 6, 7 levels of why and what and how, and I get back to a source problem, which might make many other things just go away and easier for you, I want to find out what caused that to happen, or what allowed it to happen, or both. And I need to eliminate that, the things that allowed it or caused it. And so now I've fixed a root problem that can have a dramatic impact. And what we find out is, here's what's easy about that example I gave you guys. When we went back and fixed this root problem that made all these other things just go away, what we found is it was all perspective. We didn't have to build some expensive infrastructure. We did hire a different person to run sales, so that was a little bit of work, but it was pretty easy once we knew, like, oh, well, currently we're doing things really retroactively, and we just list them, and people kind of like come to us, and it's more of just an advertising type sale. Well, we want to have a more proactive, instead of a product sale, where we just stick our product out there and have people come to us and we negotiate. We actually want to have more consultative sales, more relationship building. And we want to start with the end in mind and build the relationships, and we'll work backwards and the sales will just happen. So we revamped how that works. We did have to hire someone. What my point is, it didn't take months and months and months. And because we actually did one fix or change, right, that had a massive ramification, like saving us tons of money and risk and time and effort and made a lot of problems go away. All it was a mental shift that we had to decide that we were going to have a different approach to how we sold the properties and how we, built relationships. Instead of being transactional, we became relational. And then we built a whole infrastructure underneath that, but it was all mental, mostly, and conceptual and strategic. So it didn't cost a lot of time or money to do that. And so I think that's a big piece. If you guys have questions, let me check. Again, I want this to be interactive. If you guys got questions along the way, let me know. But this type of thinking, especially when you're running ragged in your business, right? And you just, some problem happens and it's just easy to focus on the problem part of it. And then you think you got to have this proportionate solution and you don't even have time to think. So part of this is being able to like sit back and think about your business so that you're not in it all the time. You're kind of working on it, which I know is cliche, but it's true. To start to think about like how to peel back and get to the source, right? I think that's a big piece of this. And a lot of it has to do with the fact that we're just so busy. And so many of you guys that are running businesses don't have this perspective and this process to ask why, who, what, wow, when. Is it a source? What allowed it to happen? What caused it to happen? Is there a more source type problem I could fix that would make all this just go away, right? And start there and work on fixing, and growing my strengths instead of like trying to fight against my weaknesses. That stuff I think could have a massive impact on business for you guys. So this fits really well with if you're facing a current problem and or you want to make a big change for 2021, right? It's really the same process, whether it's a problem. So let me see. I made some notes here. What else today? Put questions in, guys. Oh yeah, I forgot. This is good. So this is something I learned that I wanted to make sure I talked about today. Here's an analogy of this, of why we tend to focus on the negative part. It's the same reason when you guys know this, when you do business with someone and it doesn't go well, they say like a happy person tells one or two people, but a pissed off person tells like a couple dozen people or tells everyone. It's the same concept. Negative gets more attention from us in our mind, right? Instead of positive. It's why we focus on our weaknesses instead of trying to look to our strengths. It's the exact same concept. The same reason why if you're happy, you definitely want to tell some people, but you don't make it a main point. Some people do. But if you're mad, you want to tell everybody. And you're like, I don't want anyone to experience this. And so it's kind of along the same thinking, if that helps you guys, right? And here's another analogy maybe. If you think about how many novels have been written about marriage, right? There's some kind of marriage element in it, or movies or stories. How many of those have been written about a good marriage where everything was good and the whole focus was making it better? It's not even interesting to us. It's like looking at a wreck that you want to look at when you drive by. It's like somehow our brains like literally focus on this negative part. Every movie we ever watch is about a broken marriage, and are they going to get back together, or do they split and find new love? And the reality is like, that's what draws people's interest. And that's why we look at the negative side of problems and worry about the negative side of change too. So this is maybe an even better analogy. If you've got kids, I'm trying to see who's on here. Okay, yeah, I know 3 or 4 of you guys do. So at least, think about when your kids brought home their report card and literally say it's like an A, 4 B's, a C, and an F. Like, tell me that you don't immediately be like, what's going on with this F? Right? And you immediately think, hey, we gotta get a tutor. I'm taking your Xbox away from you, or your iPhone. we got to shut this down. This is a major issue. Like you're calling your spouse, like, what are we doing? He's flunking this class or she's flunking this class. Right. And you would start focusing all this effort and and here's the key. And you would put massive action, like taking away their crap and hiring tutors and calling the school and checking in with the teacher. Like you spring to action and you put massive focus on that F. The reality is, what if you started with that level of effort and action, like springing to action with all that emotion and intensity to say, oh my gosh, look at this A you got. What is it about that class that's working? It's a bright spot, right? People just don't focus on that. It's the same thing that happens in our business, and we're not even conscious of it. It just happens, and it drags us into this working on the wrong problems all the time. People are constantly working on the wrong problems in their business, and they're putting a ton of energy towards things that they can't affect very much. Whereas like a little bit of energy can have a big impact in the right place. And so back to this analogy of the report card is just realizing that like maybe that kid tells you why they like that teacher and why that class is fun. And it clicks. And then we say, okay, well, now that I kind of know that, that's really good. You know, we're not doing so well in the, you know, a couple of these. How do you think we could apply that to the class you're getting an F in? Maybe you need to get to know the teacher better. Maybe we need to do a different, maybe that teacher teaches a different style and we need to go to school and ask, hey, can they do this in that class, right? So then when you focus on the bright spots, you can take, you know, it's much more feel good energy, right? But you can take some of that and apply it to the spots that you need to repair or work on. And not to mention, by the way, if you're a parent, like your kid would feel a lot better if you did that to them instead of feeling like a loser and hate themselves. But all right. So let's talk about a couple. Well, I got another topic I want to cover here. Let me check on time. All right, so we're at 4:07. So I want to keep you guys rolling. If you guys have Q&A, let me see. Okay, cool. Steve, I like your name, dude. Good name. So Steve said, what if the problem's not in your control? Or let me see if I can, hold on. Hold this back up. What if the problem's not in your control? The solution is your business partner and you don't agree. Okay. Steve, let me know if there's something different, if I'm not reading this correctly, but I think what you're saying is, what if you've identified a problem that you got to fix and a business partner is in charge of that or doesn't agree with the fix and you don't know how to move forward on it? Let me know if that's right. Just type. Okay. Cool. All right. So now, yeah, I get it. So he said, yeah, that's what it is. So here's the reality. We did, man, Steve, first of all, go back and watch last week's partnership. I think you're going to really like it. And maybe what you can do, instead of taking some of these ideas about partnering with new people to figure out, to make sure you're on the same page before you get into business, maybe you guys can just identify that you have an issue in the business. And instead of focusing on the big solution and you have this other solution and they don't have, and you don't agree, maybe you guys can take the same concept I just talked to you and try to shift your concept to find something that you guys can agree on. Can you guys agree what the problem is? Not what the solution needs to be, but go back and agree on what problem you're really dealing with and what the source of that is. Because first of all, just doing that alone might better get you guys on the same page, because you guys may have two different perspectives on what's really happening, which is why you guys have different perspectives on what you need to do about it. Secondly, if that doesn't help, I would gloss over what the solution is and I would try to qualify and quantify what impact, if you guys can agree on the problem, don't worry about the solution yet. Try to agree on the quantitative and qualitative issue of impact it's going to have on the business. This gives you some magnitude, like some gravity to the situation to understand, oh, okay, well, we have this issue. We both agree that it's kind of stemming from this or closely, or really, we both agree totally on this. Secondly, now we realize how big is this issue going to be and what kinds of impact? Because I bet over here, one of the reasons you guys don't agree on the solution is because you guys don't agree with what the impact in your business is. So if you can get clear and talk about facts and don't most arguments people have is about belief system. One person believes something different than another person. And it's not about sharing what's true and accurate. It's you got to realize if you're going to ask someone to change their mind, you're asking them to restructure their belief system, which might be based on some principle that their dad's dad, their grandfather taught them in business 20 years ago. And you're going to wreck that whole belief structure in their head. So you got to understand where they're coming from. Right. And so agreeing on the source and then agreeing on the impact are going to be two keys that will kind of bookend you back into and help you hone in down to, okay, well, given this information, we've agreed as closely as possible here. So now we're kind of looking in the middle. Those are the guidelines, the bumpers that we can get in between. And now we can start to talk about possible solutions. And then from there, I think you need to say, hey, I'm open to your ideas. I'm just asking you're open to mine. And we need to play these scenarios out. How much are they going to cost? How long are they going to take? And are they going to fix the source? And are they going to, help us minimize or maximize the impact, whether it's good or bad, right? So let's brainstorm in pro con and not just pro con, but also talk about the time it takes and the money and what are the other resources and then how big of an impact it's going to have. So I'll say it again. The money it's going to take, the time it's going to take, any other resources it's going to take that you may or may not have, which might be hiring somebody that because you need some information you don't know or something like that. And then how much is that going to impact the business? And so go ahead and say, hey, your solution and my solution we both have equal votes. So these have equal potential with us. We're going to break them down and pro con them and then work on those 4 things I just said and put it all on paper. And I think part of this process will be getting you guys to communicate more openly with each other and find all the places, the bright spots where you guys agree and build on that, right? And see how much you can agree on and just realize that you might be wrong. They might be right. Or both of you could be wrong, or both of you could be right. When you go into a negotiation like that, which is what this is, an argument, but it's a negotiation, if you want them to be willing to be open-minded, you have to be open-minded. And you have to be willing to listen and change your mind if you want them to be willing to listen and change your mind. And it sounds like you guys need some just solid, straight up, transparent communication. So, all right, hope that helps. Just put a follow-up in there if you got any other questions on that. Guys, let me see. Question. Nope. Yep. Thanks, dude. Appreciate that, Tim. Yeah, right on, man. I did have a good Christmas. Hopefully you did too. Okay, I don't see any other questions right now. So we got, I don't know, 5 or 10 minutes here. Does anybody have any other open questions off topic that they want to cover? There's some other core things I want to talk about, but I think I gave you guys a lot to chew on. If you're going to want to make a change in your business, whether that's because you have a problem, because you want to create something better, a lot of the stuff I gave you will work the same either way. I've got some cool stuff here that I prepared, but I'm going to do this in another one. Maybe I'll do this one. I think I'm doing one next week. I'll check here before we get done. But just some decision paralysis and kind of the psychology of decisions. Yeah, maybe what I'll do is take this today's discussion to kind of another level about decision making and planning and strategy, because I think that'll fit well with getting ready for next year. So let's double check the calendar together. So next Monday is the 4th. I'm going to do, yeah, I'll be on. So cool. I think that's what I'll do is talk about decision making and strategy planning combination kind of for the beginning for January. By the way, you should have already had your plans for 2021 done. So it's a little bit late to the gate to be talking about it, but I think it'll fit well for everybody, because I would imagine some of you guys might still be kind of tweaking and pulling numbers together. So what questions? Anybody have any last questions here? Dave Short. Cool. What's up, Dave? Long time no talk. From last question, does this approach matter if it's a struggling or successful business? Yeah, absolutely. So if I didn't say that out loud, so if this is that whole decision making or like negotiating with each other, um, he was asking if this would work if you're struggling or successful either way. It absolutely would work. Here's the problem. If there's two probably types of struggling, one would be if the business just isn't viable. I'll say this first. If the business isn't viable, and I'm not saying your business is that, Dave, but if the business isn't viable or there's some systemic problems going on that are going to be really hard to cure, the good communication doesn't really help unless it's really honest communication with like, maybe we should kill this thing or make a big sweeping change, or one of us needs to get bought out. But it's about good, clean, open communication, right? If the business is struggling just because of finances, or sales or COVID or something like that, where it's like, look, we want to make a smart decision, but one of the reasons we're not is because we're worried about the expense or time or commitment or whatever, because the revenue and expense ratio is struggling right now. Then you need to have this conversation even more. And when you get to the component of breaking down the possible solutions, you just need to be willing to say, hey, not only what is the best thing to do, pro con, but what is also the most viable. So it's like, yeah, here's our 2 or 3 solutions, and what's the best solution here, for the business going forward. But you have to overlay on top of that decision making, but what's the reality of our current situation given expenses and revenue, right? So that's one issue, is that besides the issue that the business may not be viable, right? But it could be struggling because of expense P&L. If business is struggling because of partnerships, then this is the conversation that potentially would say, okay, what are the possible solutions here? Can we communicate? Are we willing to listen to each other and be open-minded about anything, even if I don't agree with it right now? But like, can we come together and put the solutions on the table, which could be to, again, one person buy the other one out, one person, I don't know, take a different position in the company, restructure the equity plan, change commission plans. I mean, whatever this may be, if it's between, partners or management level people, someone's going to have to be willing to kind of start the conversation and say, hey, instead of just going legal or agreeing to disagree and hating each other and dealing with a business we hate, we've got to sit down and flush out the solutions. And all solutions are okay. Back to what I was saying, we're going to put them on the table, but we got to break them down about pros and cons and how long is it going to take? How much is it going to cost? Right. And then I think once you do that without, no side comments, no like, take the emotion out of it, get them on the table, and then talk through each solution and ask, on a scale of like, 1 to 10, 10 being this is a perfect solution, 1 being I hate it and I don't want to do it, and 5 being like I'm open to it, but it doesn't seem that great, but maybe some version could work. Rate this thing on both of you guys, or all 3 or 4, how many there are. You could do some kind of system like that where, again, you're trying to get to apples conversation where you get to open, transparent communication, and you're really brainstorming on possible outcomes with the ego set aside. Like that's a big key. If not everybody's willing to set their ego aside, sometimes you have to do something like bring an attorney or an arbitrator or whatever to get involved, or send a formal notice to the person or whatever to get their attention so that they can get to the brass tacks of like decision making about the problem at hand, and openly pro-conning all the possible solutions and being honest about what they mean, what they'll cost, and how long they'll take. And then being probably, Dave, if your question also stems around the idea of like people butting heads with egos and strategy, it's about being honest with why each other's feelings are hurt, or who's thinking who got screwed, or what's really going on. Because you might be negotiating some, if this is the question, Dave, if you're negotiating, if the struggle is like we don't agree on this problem about how to do something, well, the reality is, as humans, a lot of times we're projecting the issue we really have, where our feelings are hurt, like we feel neglected or ashamed or something like that, or we feel like we're getting screwed or not taken care of, which all does go back to shame and neglect. And we're projecting it into this problem where I don't believe in this product, or I want to change the service, or I want to rebrand the company, or I don't agree with our partnership. I want more commission, like, and you're stuck fixing the wrong problem. It's back to what I was saying, like, and then all your attention is sucked into the negative, into the struggle. Well, where did this all start from, right? What were the bright spots? Like, what was the initial plan? When were you, where was the time when you guys were excited? What was exciting? What was supposed to happen, right? Go back to that, spend some time there, because that's a place where you guys can probably agree on something and start from there and kind of, again, build on the positive, right? And then work down the pipeline until you get to where, oh, well, this is where things kind of derailed. Well, how'd that make you feel? Like, what are you really frustrated about? I know you're asking for this, but what's the real problem, right? So I don't know. Hopefully that helps. Let's see. We'll do, if anybody's got one or two more, I'll do a couple more minutes. Hold on. All right. So Mark said, oh, he's just saying that, yeah, he's dealt with this in the past and open communication was the best possible path to solutions every time. Yeah, I agree. Problem is, sometimes it takes third parties to get involved, which unfortunately is attorneys to get to the solution. Or sometimes their heads never fail. And I've seen a lot of business partnerships fail and businesses go out just because they couldn't be honest with each other. All right, cool guys. Anyone else have anything last minute thing to pop in? I'll give you guys like 30 seconds to put in there while I'm telling you, reminding you guys, back to what I said when we started. If you guys aren't familiar with the CEO Nation, I'm Steve Richards, by the way, and I started the CEO Nation. We're building this movement. It's a tribe to really help business owners grow from being self-employed, struggling, hustling, stuck in the day-to-day, right? And having to work for their business to becoming true CEOs that actually own a business that works for them. We're all in this. It doesn't flip a switch one day. We're all in this journey. It's a trajectory that we're on, and we want to meet you wherever you're at on that and help you get to the next level. And so to do that, we've got the free KPI guide I talked about on the website, the podcast, the Facebook group, this weekly Zoom. We have training products, we have coaching products. All this stuff is designed just to help you guys. And my purpose in life is to create impact with people. And specifically at this point in my life, I resonate best with entrepreneurs about helping them create some true freedom in their life. The freedom, like real freedom, is kind of like the sunset, the horizon. You can see out there and you think that's where I want to go, and you run as fast and hard as you want towards it, and you never get there, because as you experience different levels of income and freedom and team and value and purpose and things grow, like your goals grow accordingly, right? So it's kind of like if all you did was judge your success based on how close you are to the horizon, if that's your goal, you're going to be really frustrated and never happy, because you're just going to run, and you're always going to be the same distance to the horizon. Now, if I can stick a flag in the ground every once in a while, and then run, stick another flag in the ground, look back and look at the distance between the two, right? This is kind of part of the KPI tracking, and realize, my gosh, we made this, and enjoy the journey, right? But also take time to look at what's working, what's not working, make decisions based on that information, right? And so there's a cadence to this, growing in your freedom and becoming the CEO who has more to be able to buy more of their time back, to have more influence and authority and success and happiness and income, right? So there's a couple cool things that we have coming out that I'm excited to tell you guys about in next month. But in general, between now and then, DM me on Facebook. It's the best way to catch me. Join the CEO Nation Facebook group if you're not there. Drop a post or a comment in there. Come back to the Monday meeting here, the Monday weekly, with your questions. I would love this to be a little more interactive than it is. You can check out all the past ones in the CEO Nation. Just scroll down through the feed and find them. And I think other than that, I don't see any new questions. So you guys have a happy new year. It's going to be freaking 2021 the next time we talk, which I can't believe. But I'm excited about it. I hope you guys are too. And I'll see you soon.